The wind howled across 29 palms at 43 kilometers per hour with gusts reaching 60. Corporal Maya Thorne pressed her cheek against the stock of her rifle, her breathing steady despite the chaos of simulated combat erupting around her. 3,800 meters downrange, a target no larger than a dinner plate waited in conditions that made the shot mathematically impossible. Through his spotting scope, Commander James Keller of the Navy SEALs watched her adjust for the third time and muttered into his radio. Who is she even aiming at? The question hung in the desert air as Maya's finger moved to the trigger. 3 years of mockery and doubt compressed into this single moment. But that moment was still 3 years away. Maya had arrived at Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton on a Tuesday morning in September with everything she owned packed into a single duffel bag. The California sun beat down on the asphalt as she stepped off the bus, one of 32 Marines selected for the advanced sniper course. She was the only woman. The other candidates barely glanced at her as they formed up outside the training building, their attention focused on the cadre of instructors assembled on the steps. Maya hung back slightly, her eyes scanning the wind flags positioned around the distant ranges, watching how they danced and shifted in patterns that spoke to her like a language most people never learned to read. Staff Sergeant Derek Voss stood at the center of the instructor line, his uniform crisp despite the heat, his bearing that of a man who had spent 15 years perfecting the art of looking down on others. His gaze swept across the assembled students and stopped on Maya. The pause lasted only a fraction of a second, but she felt it like a physical weight. When he spoke, his voice carried the practiced authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. Welcome to Advanced Sniper Course. Some of you earned your way here through skill. Others are here because the Marine Corps has quotas to fill. Over the next 12 weeks, we will discover which is which. Maya felt her jaw tighten, but kept her expression neutral. She had heard variations of this speech before, first in boot camp, then in infantry training, and again during her initial marksmanship courses. The words changed, but the message remained constant. You do not belong here. Prove me wrong or prove me right. But either way, I already know the answer. She had stopped trying to argue with words years ago. On the range, the only argument that mattered was where the bullet went. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment and let us know what state you're watching from. Maybe you have witnessed similar acts of courage where you are from. The first qualification shoot began at 0600 the following morning. Maya drew her assigned rifle from the armory and immediately began her inspection routine, a process she had refined over countless hours of practice. She checked the bore, examined the action, tested the trigger pull weight, and mounted her scope with the precision of a watchmaker. Around her, other students performed similar checks, but Maya saw what they missed. She noticed the slight cant in one student's scope mount before he did. When he struggled with his zero during warm-up, she moved to his station during a break. Your mount is off by 0.7 degrees, she said quietly. If you do not fix it before qualification, you will be fighting your rifle all day. The student, a lance corporal named Isaiah Reeves from Georgia, looked at her with surprise. How did you even see that? Maya shrugged. Wind is not the only thing you need to learn to read. Isaiah adjusted his mount and shot a perfect qualification score. He found Maya afterward in the armory as they cleaned their weapons. I owe you, he said. That was heading toward disaster. Maya did not look up from her cleaning rod. Just shoot straight. That is all any of us need to do. Isaiah grinned. Yeah, but some of us need help getting there. I'm Isaiah, by the way. Maya, she replied. Where did you learn to spot stuff like that? My stepfather, Maya said, and something in her tone made Isaiah drop the subject. Maya shot her own qualification with a perfect score, every round precisely where she intended it despite wind conditions that had half the class struggling. She did not celebrate, did not show emotion, simply logged her score and moved to clean her weapon. As she left the range, she overheard Voss speaking to another instructor. Lucky wind conditions for her. Consistent from the right. Anyone can shoot well when the wind cooperates. The other instructor nodded, but Maya caught him glancing at the wind flags, which had been shifting constantly all morning. She kept walking, her face expressionless, her mind already cataloging the subtle tells in Voss's voice. He had not expected her to succeed. More importantly, he was already constructing the narrative that would explain away any success she achieved. Luck, favorable condition, anything except skill. That evening, Maya sat alone in the barracks common area, a notebook open in front of her filled with calculations and diagrams. She was working through ballistic coefficients and environmental effects, running scenarios in her head, when Isaiah dropped into the chair across from her. "You always study alone?" he asked. Maya looked up. "Easier to concentrate." Isaiah nodded. "Fair enough. But tomorrow they are assigning spotters for team exercises. I figure we work well together. If you want a partner, I am volunteering." Maya studied him for a moment, searching for the angle, the reason behind the offer. She had learned early that kindness usually came with conditions. But Isaiah just sat there, relaxed and genuine, waiting for her answer. "Why?" she finally asked. "Why pair up with the quota girl?" Isaiah's expression hardened. "Because that is garbage, and anybody with eyes can see you're the best shot in this class. Also," he added with a slight grin, "you are smart enough to fix my mistakes before they become disasters, and I am smart enough to know that is valuable." Maya felt something unfamiliar stir in her chest. Not quite trust, but the possibility of it. "Okay," she said. "Tomorrow then." Isaiah stood and offered his hand. "Tomorrow." They shook, and Maya allowed herself the smallest of smiles as he walked away. For the first time since arriving at Camp Pendleton, she felt like maybe, possibly, she was not entirely alone in this fight. The next morning, Maya arrived at the armory to draw her rifle for the day's exercises and found her assigned weapon was not in its rack. The armory sergeant checked his roster twice before locating it in the repair section. "Huh," he said, scanning the tag. "Says here the scope needed recalibration. Came in last night for emergency maintenance. Should be good now, though." Maya took the rifle and immediately noticed the scope mount was loose, the calibration obviously off by anyone's standard. This was not maintenance. This was sabotage. She looked up to see Voss watching from across the armory, his expression neutral, his eyes cold. The message was clear. This is what you can expect. Every day, every exercise, until you quit or fail. Maya met his gaze without flinching, then turned her attention to the rifle. She had 2 hours before the exercise began. 2 hours to fix what someone had deliberately broken. She thought about her stepfather, about the things he had broken in her that she had learned to fix alone. A rifle scope was nothing compared to that. She pulled out her tools and got to work. Maya finished the scope recalibration with 11 minutes to spare before formation. The work had been meticulous, requiring her to compensate for the deliberate misalignment someone had introduced into the mounting system. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, muscle memory from countless hours spent learning the internal mechanisms of every weapon system the Marine Corps had ever issued her. When she test-sighted through the corrected scope, the reticle aligned perfectly with her calculations. Good enough. It would have to be. Isaiah was waiting at the formation point when she arrived, his own rifle already prepped and ready. He took one look at her face and knew something had happened. "They mess with your weapon?" he asked quietly. Maya nodded once, not trusting herself to speak without anger bleeding through. Isaiah's jaw tightened. "That is beyond unprofessional. That is dangerous. You should report it." "To who?" Maya asked. "The instructor who probably ordered it?" Isaiah started to respond, then stopped, recognizing the truth in her words. Instead, he said, "Then we make sure you shoot so well today that it does not matter what they do to your equipment." The morning exercise was tactical stalking followed by precision fire from concealed positions. Students worked in spotter-shooter pairs, with roles rotating throughout the day. Maya and Isaiah drew the worst time slot. High noon with the sun directly overhead, creating heat mirages that made distance estimation nearly impossible. Other pairs had shot during the cooler morning hours or would shoot in the gentler afternoon light. Maya and Isaiah got the furnace hours, and both knew it was not coincidence. They moved into position through scrub brush and rocky terrain, Maya leading the stalk with Isaiah providing security and navigation. She moved like water, flowing around obstacles rather than pushing through them. Her footfalls silent even on loose gravel. Isaiah, following her path, found himself impressed by the route she chose, always using terrain features to mask their approach, always staying in shadows when possible. When they reached their final firing position, Maya settled into the dirt behind her rifle, while Isaiah set up the spotting scope beside her. 600 meters downrange, their target waited, a silhouette barely visible against the desert backdrop. Maya began her environmental assessment, a process that had become as natural to her as breathing. Wind speed and direction at their position, estimated wind at mid-range, estimated wind at target. Temperature gradients creating vertical deflection. Earth rotation affecting bullet drift over distance. She ran the calculations in her head, numbers flowing through her consciousness like a familiar song. Beside her, Isaiah called out range and wind readings from his instruments, but Maya had already incorporated those variables before he spoke. The heat mirage was the real challenge. It created a shimmering distortion that made the target appear to dance and shift, an optical illusion that could throw off even experienced shooters. Maya watched the pattern of the mirage, noting its rhythm, understanding that beneath the apparent chaos was a predictable cycle. She waited, breathing slowly, finger resting alongside the trigger guard. Not yet. Not yet. The mirage settled for a fraction of a second, the briefest moment of clarity. Maya's finger moved to the trigger, her breath released halfway, and she pressed straight back. The rifle report echoed across the range. Through his spotting scope, Isaiah watched the trace of the bullet cutting through the desert air, watched it strike the target's center mass. Perfect hit. He turned to look at Maya, expecting to see satisfaction or relief, but her face showed nothing. She was already running the math for the second shot, already adapting to the microscopic changes in wind and temperature. This is what she did. This is what she was. They completed the exercise with 5 perfect shots from 5 different positions, each one adapted to changing conditions, each one demonstrating a level of skill that went beyond training into something approaching artistry. When they returned to the staging area, other students were discussing their own performances, comparing scores, debating wind calls. Maya cleaned her weapon in silence while Isaiah logged their data. Voss appeared as they were finishing, his boots crunching on gravel as he approached. "Corporal Thorne," he said, his voice carrying just enough to draw attention from nearby students. "Interesting performance today. Perfect score despite equipment issues." Maya looked up from her cleaning rod. "Thank you, Staff Sergeant." Voss's smile did not reach his eyes, although I have to wonder about the methodology. Taking shots during peak heat mirage conditions, relying on brief windows of clarity, that is not standard doctrine. It is effective when conditions demand adaptation. "Staff Sergeant," Maya replied evenly. Voss shook his head slowly. Effective or reckless. There is a difference. In combat, you do not get to wait for perfect conditions. You take the shot you have when you have it. "True," Voss said, "but in combat, you also have a spotter and team leader making those calls. Individual initiative can be dangerous when it contradicts established procedures." Isaiah stood up from where he had been organizing their equipment. "Staff Sergeant, I was spotting. We made those calls together." Voss did not even look at him. The shooter makes the final decision. Lance Corporal. That is doctrine. And when the shooter is inexperienced, that decision can put others at risk. I will be noting today's performance in my evaluation, both the results and the methods used to achieve them. He turned and walked away, leaving the implication hanging in the air like smoke. Maya returned to cleaning her rifle, her movements mechanical, her face carefully blank. Isaiah waited until Voss was out of earshot before speaking. "He is building a case against you. Everything you do right, he is going to twist into something questionable." Maya did not look up. "I know. Then why not fight back? Report him? Go to the commander?" "Because," Maya said quietly, "the commander will ask for evidence. And all Voss has to say is that he is concerned about safety and adherence to doctrine. He is not wrong that individual initiative can be dangerous. He is not wrong that I am less experienced than most students here. He's just wrong about whether those things make me a liability. But wrong is harder to prove than right. Isaiah sat down beside her, his voice low and intense. So what do? We shoot better than everyone else, Maya said. We follow every rule, execute every drill, pass every test. We give him nothing he can use except excellence. And eventually, either excellence wins or it does not. But at least we will know we did everything possible. Isaiah studied her profile, seeing something in her expression that spoke of older battles, harder lessons learned before she ever put on a uniform. You have done this before, he said. Not a question. Maya's hands stilled on the cleaning rod for just a moment. Different uniform, different enemy, same fight, she said. My stepfather used to tell me I would never be worth anything. Used to break my things when I succeeded at something, said it was to teach me that success was not permanent. I learned to succeed anyway, to rebuild what he broke, to keep going no matter what he took away. Eventually, I got old enough to leave. Joined the Marines the day I turned 18. Thought maybe here, merit would matter more than his opinion of my worth. She resumed cleaning, her voice steady. Turns out some fights follow you. Isaiah was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, for what it is worth, your stepfather was wrong. And so is Voss. Maya allowed herself the smallest smile. Worth a lot, actually. Thank you. They finished their equipment maintenance in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from shared understanding rather than lack of words. Around them, other students packed up and headed toward the barracks, their conversations fading into the distance. The sun was beginning its descent toward the western horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. As they walked back together, Maya felt the weight of the day settling into her shoulders, fatigue mixing with determination. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities for Voss to undermine her, new tests to pass. But tonight, she had Isaiah watching her back and the knowledge that she had shot perfectly despite sabotaged equipment and impossible conditions. Tonight, that was enough. The real test, the one that would define everything, was still years away. But she was building toward it, one perfect shot at a time, one day, survived at a time. The path forward was narrow and hostile, but it was hers. And she had never backed down from a fight she believed she could win, no matter how long it took or how much it cost. The week that followed became a masterclass in psychological warfare, disguised as professional training. Voss assigned Maya to every challenging scenario the course offered, always with some plausible explanation that made objection impossible. When other students rotated through varied conditions, Maya drew consecutive night shoots in high wind. When the class practiced vehicle-mounted operations, Maya got the unstable platform assignments. When they worked urban scenarios, Maya received positions with the most complex environmental calculations. Each assignment came with Voss's carefully neutral expression and the implicit challenge. Prove you belong here. Again, and again, and again. Maya proved it every time. Her night vision work showed an almost preternatural ability to read darkness and shadow. Her vehicle-mounted shots compensated for movement and vibration with calculations that left instructors checking her math twice before believing it. Her urban work demonstrated understanding of concrete canyons and wind tunnels that most shooters took years to develop. She was not just succeeding, she was excelling, and that made Voss more dangerous. Isaiah noticed the pattern before anyone else did. He started tracking the assignments, noting how Maya consistently drew the hardest scenarios while Voss's favorite student, a corporal named Bennett from Texas, received the most straightforward shoots. Bennett was good, legitimately skilled, but his path through the course was smooth pavement compared to Maya's obstacle course. When Isaiah mentioned this to Maya during evening equipment prep, she just nodded. I know. You going to report it? He asked. Maya shook her head. Report what? That the instructor is giving me challenging training? That he is pushing me harder than others? It sounds like good instruction when you say it that way. Unless you can prove the intent is to make me fail rather than make me better, it is just words against words. But the pattern was clear to anyone paying attention, and Gunnery Sergeant Patricia Nash had been paying very close attention. Nash was one of only 3 female instructors on the entire base, a 20-year veteran who had fought her own battles to reach her position. She appeared in the barracks one evening after a particularly brutal day of training, her presence commanding immediate respect from the assembled students. "Corporal Thorne," she said, her voice carrying the authority of 2 decades in uniform. "A word, please." Maya followed her outside to where the California evening air had finally cooled enough to breathe without feeling like the desert was extracting payment for every breath. Nash did not waste time with small talk. "I have been watching your progression through this course. Your performance has been exceptional." "Thank you, Gunnery Sergeant," Maya replied, uncertain where this conversation was heading. Nash continued, "I have also been watching Staff Sergeant Voss's instruction methods." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "There is a difference between challenging a student and setting them up to fail. I want you to understand that difference because you're going to face both throughout your career. The challenging instructor pushes you beyond your comfort zone to develop skills you did not know you had. The destructive instructor pushes you beyond reasonable limits, hoping you will break. The hard part is knowing which one you are facing, because both will make you suffer." Maya met Nash's eyes, seeing in them the recognition of someone who had survived her own version of this same fight. "How do you tell the difference?" she asked. "Results," Nash said. "A challenging instructor celebrates when you exceed expectations. A destructive one finds reasons why your success does not count. A challenging instructor adjusts methods when they see you thriving despite adversity. A destructive one just adds more adversity." She let that sink in before continuing. "I cannot intervene directly. The chain of command does not work that way. But I can tell you this. Document everything. Keep records of every assignment, every evaluation, every conversation. Not because you're looking to file a complaint, but because the truth is easier to see when you write it down. And if the day comes when you need to defend yourself, documentation is the only thing that matters." Maya nodded slowly, understanding the careful line Nash was walking. "Thank you, Gunnery Sergeant. This means more than you know." Nash's expression softened slightly. "I was the only woman in my sniper class 20 years ago. My instructor told me on day 1 that women did not have the emotional control for precision shooting, that I would wash out before week 3. She smiled grimly. "I retired that instructor's long-distance record before graduation. Set a standard that stood for 8 years. The point is not that you should have to prove yourself twice as hard for half the recognition. The point is that you can. And when you do, you make it easier for the next woman who sits where you are sitting now." Nash turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing. The course is announcing a joint training exercise with Naval Special Warfare in 3 weeks. SEAL snipers will be here for integrated operations training. It is high profile, high pressure, and I guarantee Voss will use it as an opportunity. Be ready." The next morning, Voss confirmed Nash's prediction during the daily briefing. "In 3 weeks, this course will host a joint exercise with Navy SEAL Team 5. You will be evaluated not just by Marine instructors, but by some of the most elite operators in the military. This is your opportunity to demonstrate that everything you have learned here transfers to real-world conditions." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the assembled students before landing on Maya. "It is also an opportunity to discover whether your skills hold up under the observation of operators who have no investment in seeing you succeed." The implication was clear. The SEALs would not care about political correctness or diversity initiatives. They would judge purely on capability. And Voss believed that judgment would not favor Maya. But something shifted in Maya when she heard about the SEAL exercise. Not fear, not anxiety, anticipation. For weeks, she had been fighting against Voss's carefully constructed narrative, battling his subtle undermining, proving herself to an audience predisposed to doubt her. The SEALs represented something different. They would not care about Marine Corps internal politics. They would not care about Voss's opinion. They would care only about whether she could shoot. And Maya knew with absolute certainty that she could shoot. The training intensified immediately. Voss designed scenarios specifically for the joint exercise, complex multi-target engagements requiring rapid calculation and adjustment. Maya and Isaiah worked as a seamless unit, their communication evolving from verbal call-outs to minimal hand signals to near telepathic coordination. Isaiah would spot a target and Maya's rifle would already be tracking toward it. He would begin calculating wind and she would have already adjusted for it. They were not just good, they were exceptional, and the other students noticed. Bennett approached Maya one evening during cleaning, his expression uncomfortable. "Look," he said, "I know Voss has been riding you hard. Just want to say your shooting is legit. Best wind reading I have ever seen, and I have been doing this for 5 years." Maya looked up, surprised by the genuine respect in his voice. "Thank you. That means something." Bennett nodded. "Yeah, well, some of us can see what is happening. Not all of us agree with it." He glanced around to ensure they were not overheard. "SEAL exercise is your chance. Voss can spin things here because he controls the narrative. But SEALs do not care about Marine Corps politics. You show them what you can do, everything changes. The question is whether Voss knows that too." That night, Maya could not sleep. She lay in her rack, staring at the ceiling, running scenarios in her head. Voss would not sabotage her equipment before the SEAL exercise, too obvious, too risky. But he would find another way to stack the deck. Maybe impossible assignments. Maybe psychological pressure. Maybe something she had not anticipated yet. She thought about her stepfather, about the elaborate ways he had found to undermine her successes, to poison her victories. She had learned young that some people needed you to fail more than they needed to succeed themselves. The trick was not letting their need become your reality. 3 weeks, she thought. 3 weeks to prepare for whatever Voss had planned. 3 weeks to sharpen every skill, eliminate every weakness, become so undeniably excellent that no amount of sabotage could prevent the SEALs from seeing her true capability. 3 weeks to build toward a moment that would either validate everything she had endured or confirm Voss's belief that she did not belong. Maya turned on her side, her mind already cataloging training priorities, calculation refinements, mental preparation protocols. Sleep would come eventually. But first, she had work to do. Outside her window, the California night stretched toward dawn, and somewhere in that darkness, her future waited. She intended to meet it ready. Commander James Keller arrived at Camp Pendleton on a Tuesday morning, 2 weeks before the joint exercise. He stepped out of a Navy staff car wearing desert camouflage utilities that somehow looked crisp despite the heat, his SEAL trident gleaming on his chest. He was younger than Maya expected for a commander, maybe 40, with the lean build of someone who still operated rather than just commanded. His eyes swept across the training ranges with the practiced assessment of someone who had spent decades evaluating tactical situations in seconds. Voss met him at the range office, all professional courtesy and carefully modulated respect. The two men shook hands, discussed logistics, reviewed training schedules. Maya watched from a distance as she prepped her equipment for the morning shoot, noting the body language, the dynamic. Voss was performing, playing the role of dedicated instructor preparing his students for elite-level evaluation. Keller listened with the patience of someone who had heard many briefings, his expression neutral, his questions focused on capability rather than politics. The morning session was standard qualification shoots. Nothing spectacular, just consistent demonstration of core skills. Keller positioned himself behind the firing line with a spotting scope, observing each student's performance with quiet intensity. When Maya's turn came, she felt the weight of his observation differently than Voss's constant scrutiny. Voss watched hoping to find failure. Keller watched evaluating capability. The difference changed everything. Maya settled into her firing position, Isaiah beside her with a spotting scope. 600 meters, moderate wind from the right, temperature rising as the morning sun climbed higher. Standard conditions, standard target. She ran her calculations, made her adjustments, and fired 5 rounds in smooth succession. All center mass. Through his scope, Keller watched not just where the bullets went, but how Maya moved, how she breathed, how she reset between shots. When she finished, he made a notation in his logbook, but said nothing. The session continued through the morning, each student demonstrating their progression through the course. Bennett shot well, his technique solid and conventional. Several others showed competent skills, the kind of reliable performance that made good snipers. But Keller kept returning his attention to Maya, watching as she helped Isaiah adjust his spotting technique during a break, observing her equipment maintenance routine, noting the methodical precision in everything she did. During the lunch break, Voss approached Keller near the command tent. "Commander, I wanted to discuss the student assignments for the joint exercise. I have been considering which students should receive the primary engagement positions and which should fill support roles." Keller looked up from the range data he was reviewing. "What are your thoughts?" Voss pulled out a roster with handwritten notes. Bennett and Rodriguez for primary counter-sniper positions. Chun and Matthews for Overwatch. Thorne, he paused meaningfully. "I was thinking support and logistics coordination, given her experience level." Keller's expression did not change. "She shot a perfect qualification this morning." Voss nodded. "Yes, under controlled conditions with standard ranges. But the joint exercise will involve extended distances, complex wind patterns, and high-pressure evaluation. I have concerns about whether she is ready for that level of responsibility." He lowered his voice slightly. "Between us, Commander, I worry that putting her in a primary role sets her up for failure that could reflect poorly on the program. Better to position her where she can contribute without excessive pressure." Keller studied Voss for a long moment. "In my experience, Staff Sergeant, pressure reveals capability rather than creating it. I would like to observe her performance under more challenging conditions before making assignment decisions." "What is her longest successful engagement to date?" Voss hesitated. 800 meters, control conditions. Keller made another note in his logbook. "Set up an extended range scenario for this afternoon. 1200 meters, variable wind. Let us see what she can do." That was not a request. The afternoon scenario materialized quickly, too quickly for it to be anything but a test that Keller had already decided to conduct. Maya and Isaiah received the briefing along with Bennett and a spotter. 1200-meter engagement, desert range with natural wind variation, targets positioned to require both elevation and windage calculation expertise. Bennett would shoot first, then Maya. Keller would observe both performances and compare. Bennett shot well, his rounds grouping within acceptable parameters for the distance. He took his time with calculations, consulted extensively with his spotter, and delivered solid, if unspectacular, results. 4 hits out of 5 attempts, all within the target zone. Respectable performance that demonstrated competent skill development. When he finished, Voss offered quiet congratulation and Bennett nodded his appreciation. Maya's turn came as the afternoon wind began its daily shift, the stable morning patterns giving way to the chaotic thermal currents that made desert shooting treacherous. She settled into position and began her assessment, watching wind flags at multiple distances, noting the dust devils forming and dissipating in the heat, calculating the vertical component from temperature gradients. Isaiah fed her data from his instruments, but Maya was already incorporating variables he had not yet measured. She could see the wind, not just its effects, but its structure, its rhythm, its personality. The first shot broke clean, the report echoing across the range. Through Keller's spotting scope, the bullet trace was visible, a slight shimmer in the air tracking toward the target. Center mass hit. Maya cycled the bolt, made a microscopic adjustment, and fired again. Another center hit. 3 more shots followed, each one adapting to the shifting wind, each one finding its mark with precision that went beyond luck or favorable conditions. 5 rounds, 5 perfect hits at 1200 meters in conditions that should have made consistent accuracy nearly impossible. Keller lowered his scope and looked at Voss. "You said 800 meters was her longest successful engagement?" Voss's jaw was tight. "That was what I had observed, yes." Keller returned to his logbook, writing detailed notes. "Then I would say she is ready for extended distances." In fact, he looked up, meeting Voss's eyes directly. "I would say she demonstrates exceptional aptitude for environmental reading and calculation under variable conditions. Those are precisely the skills we need for the exercise scenarios I am planning." After the range session ended, Isaiah found Maya in the armory during equipment cleaning. Keller was impressed. He said quietly, "Really impressed. I heard him tell the other SEAL instructors that your wind reading was graduate level work." Maya did not look up from her cleaning rod. Voss will find a way to discredit it. Isaiah shook his head. Harder to do when a SEAL commander is the one making the evaluation. This is what Nash meant about documentation. Keller is documenting your capability independent of Voss's narrative. That evening, Maya was heading back to the barracks when she noticed Voss in the administrative office, door partially open, speaking on the phone. She slowed her pace, not deliberately eavesdropping, but unable to avoid hearing his voice carrying through the doorway. "I understand the political considerations," he was saying, "but you need to understand the safety implications. Extended range shooting requires experience and judgment that cannot be taught in 12 weeks. Yes, her range performance has been adequate, but range work and field work are different animals." He paused, listening. "I am simply recommending we position students according to their genuine readiness rather than what looks good on paper." Another pause. "Yes, sir. I will have my formal recommendations ready before the exercise." Maya continued walking, her mind processing what she had heard. Voss was going above the chain, politicking behind the scenes, constructing his case against her using language that sounded like professional concern. Safety, experience, readiness, all valid considerations that masked the actual agenda. She thought about Nash's advice to document everything, about Keller's independent evaluation, about the narrowing window before the joint exercise that would determine everything. Back in Iraq that night, Maya pulled out the notebook where she had been tracking her progression. Every assignment, every score, every challenge. The pattern was undeniable when you saw it written down. Voss had given her the hardest scenarios at every turn, and she had exceeded standards on every one. But he was building a different narrative, one where her success was luck or favorable conditions, where her skill was untested potential rather than demonstrated capability. The joint exercise was supposed to be her opportunity to prove herself, but she was beginning to understand that Voss saw it as his opportunity to engineer her failure in front of witnesses who mattered. 3 days until the SEALs arrived in force. 3 days until the exercise began. 3 days to prepare for whatever scenario Voss was constructing. Maya closed her notebook and lay back, staring at the ceiling. She thought about her stepfather, about his final words to her the day she left for boot camp. "You will be back within a month," he had said. "You are not strong enough for the real world." She had proven him wrong then. She would prove Voss wrong now. The difference was that this time, the whole world would be watching. The morning of the joint exercise arrived with the kind of desert dawn that promised brutal heat by noon. Maya stood in the armory at off of 100, drawing her assigned rifle for the day's operation. The weapon she had trained with for 3 months, the one she had zeroed and rezeroed until she knew its quirks better than her own heartbeat, sat in its usual rack. But the armory sergeant handed her a different rifle, referencing a last-minute assignment change on his roster. "This is not my weapon," Maya said, keeping her voice level. Sergeant checked his paperwork. "Says here your primary rifle had a trigger issue flagged during yesterday's inspection. This is your backup assignment." Maya took the rifle, her stomach sinking as she felt the unfamiliar weight distribution, the different balance point. She had fired this backup weapon exactly twice during familiarization training. It shot differently, responded differently, had different characteristics she would need to compensate for. And she had approximately 90 minutes to figure out how before the exercise began. Isaiah found her on the practice range, running through rapid zeroing procedures with controlled desperation. "What happened?" "Your rifle was fine yesterday. We both checked it." Maya fired another round, adjusted her scope, fired again. "Trigger issue, apparently. Flagged during inspection." Isaiah's expression darkened. "Inspection by who? Does it matter?" Maya asked, though they both knew it did. She had 70 minutes left. 70 minutes to learn this rifle's personality, to understand its tendencies, to build the muscle memory that normally took weeks to develop. She fired again, noted the impact point, made another adjustment. The rifle shot slightly left and low compared to her primary weapon. Not much, maybe .3 mils, but at extended distances that tiny variation would compound into mission failure. The SEAL teams arrived in a convoy of vehicles, their presence transforming the training range into something that felt more like a deployment. Commander Keller moved among his operators with easy authority, conducting final briefings, reviewing scenarios, ensuring equipment readiness. Other SEAL snipers set up their positions, their movements professional and efficient. These were men who had made shots in Ramadi and Helmand province, who had operated in conditions that made training exercises look like Sunday recreation. And they were about to watch Maya try to prove she belonged in their world. Voss gathered the Marine students for final assignments. The scenario was complex, a simulated hostage rescue requiring multiple sniper positions providing overwatch while SEAL assault teams maneuvered. Bennett received primary counter-sniper duty, 300 meters with clear sight lines and moderate wind. Rodriguez got building overwatch at 500 meters. Chun drew vehicle interdiction at 600 meters. Standard assignments for standard capabilities. Then Voss turned to Maya. Corporal Thorne, you will take position on Ridge 7 for long-range containment. The words sounded professional, tactical, reasonable. But Maya knew the terrain. Ridge 7 overlooked the entire scenario area from 3,800 meters, well beyond what any student had attempted during the course. The position would require her to account for wind variations across 4 distinct elevation changes, temperature gradients creating vertical deflection, and the Coriolis effect from Earth's rotation at that distance. It was a position designed for graduate-level snipers, not students 3 months into training. And she would be attempting it with an unfamiliar rifle in front of Navy SEALs who would judge whether Marine sniper training produced operators worth respecting. Maya heard the assignment and understood immediately what Voss had engineered. If she declined, she admitted she was not ready, confirmed his assessment that she needed more training. If she accepted and failed, she proved his point about experience and judgment in front of the SEALs. If she accepted and succeeded, well, Voss had made that mathematically improbable with the rifle switch and the impossible parameters. It was a perfect trap, months in the making, executed with plausible deniability and professional vocabulary. Understood, Staff Sergeant, Maya said, her voice steady. Isaiah beside her tensed, but said nothing. They both knew objecting would only make things worse. Keller, standing nearby reviewing range cards, looked up at the assignment. Ridge 7? That is beyond course standard distance, is it not? Voss nodded smoothly. It is an advanced position, Commander. But the scenario requires coverage of the far approach, and Corporal Thorne has demonstrated aptitude for extended range calculation. I believe she can handle it. The words said one thing. His tone said he was giving her enough rope to hang herself. Maya and Isaiah moved to their position. The climb to Ridge 7 taking 40 minutes of careful movement through rocky terrain. When they reached the firing point, Maya set up her rifle and began her environmental assessment. The wind at their position was steady from the northwest at 15 kilometers per hour. But between her position and the target area, 3,800 meters away, the wind passed through a canyon that would accelerate it, over a ridge that would create turbulence, and down into a depression where it would swirl and eddy. Reading that wind was like trying to read 4 different books simultaneously while someone kept changing the language. Isaiah set up his spotting scope and began taking measurements. But even his instruments could only tell them conditions at their location. The mid-range wind variations were invisible. Mathematical estimates based on terrain features and experience Maya did not have. She pulled out her notebook, began sketching the terrain profile, calculating likely wind behavior at each elevation change. The numbers swam before her eyes. Too many variables, too much uncertainty. This was not just difficult. This was approaching impossible. Down in the exercise area, the scenario began. SEAL teams moved into position, their movements coordinated and professional. Bennett engaged his counter-sniper targets cleanly. Rodriguez provided effective overwatch. Chun interdicted the vehicle approach with textbook precision. The Marine students were performing well, demonstrating the training they had received. And Maya sat on Ridge 7, watching through her scope at a target so distant it appeared as a tiny silhouette, trying to calculate wind she could not see with a rifle she barely knew. She took her first ranging shot, aiming for a reference point to establish her zero at this distance. The bullet impacted 4 feet left and 2 feet low, the wind and unfamiliar rifle characteristics combining to create massive deviation. Isaiah called the correction, but Maya was already running new calculations, adjusting her model. She made the correction and fired again. Still off, closer but not close enough. The exercise continued around her, other students succeeding while she struggled with fundamentals. Through his command scope, Keller watched Maya's position with growing concern. 2 ranging shots, both missing badly. He keyed his radio to the observation post. Is the Ridge 7 position experiencing equipment issues? The OP replied negative, conditions normal. Keller frowned, noting the pattern in his logbook. Down below, he could see Voss watching Maya's position as well, his expression professionally neutral, but his body language satisfied. Maya fired a 3rd time, adjusted again, fired a 4th. Each shot was closer, but the target remained untouched. Around her, the simulated hostage scenario was reaching its conclusion. Bennett had neutralized all counter-sniper threats. Rodriguez had cleared the assault path. Chun had stopped the vehicle interdiction. The SEAL teams were preparing for building entry, and Maya had yet to make a single successful engagement from Ridge 7. She felt it then, the familiar weight of failure settling into her chest. The voice that sounded like her stepfather, like Voss, like every person who had ever told her she was not good enough. You do not belong here. You are not strong enough. You will never be worth anything. She lowered her rifle, her breathing unsteady, tears threatening at the corners of her eyes despite her desperate effort to maintain control. 3 months of perfect performance, erased by 1 impossible assignment and 1 switched rifle. Isaiah, watching through his spotting scope, saw her shoulders slump and knew what was happening. He had seen this before in other students, the moment when the weight became too much, when the fight went out of them. But this was Maya, who had survived worse than Voss, who had rebuilt herself from nothing, who had earned her place through pure skill and determination. He could not let her break. Not here, not like this. Maya, he said quietly, urgency cutting through his usual calm. Look at me. She turned her face away, not wanting him to see the tears. Maya, he repeated more firmly. She finally looked at him, and he saw in her eyes the girl who had been broken by her stepfather, the one who had learned that success was temporary and failure was permanent. That girl did not belong here. But that was not who Maya was anymore. Remember what you told me? Isaiah said, about your stepfather breaking your things when you succeeded? About rebuilding anyway? This is that. This is Voss breaking your rifle, giving you an impossible shot, hoping you quit. So do not give him what he wants. He leaned closer, his voice intense. Forget the exercise. Forget the SEALs watching. Forget everything except the math. You're the best wind reader I have ever seen. You can calculate trajectories in your head that other people need computers for. So calculate this. Figure out this rifle. Read this wind. Not because the exercise requires it. Because you refuse to let them break you again. Maya stared at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, took a deep breath, and returned to her scope. Isaiah was right. This was just math. Just physics. Just wind and distance and ballistics. And she understood those things better than anyone. She began again, running fresh calculations, approaching the problem like she was teaching herself rather than trying to perform. The rifle wanted to shoot left and low. Fine. She would give it right and high. The wind was chaos across 4 elevation zones. Fine. She would model each zone separately and integrate the results. It was not impossible. It was just very, very hard. And she had been doing very hard things her entire life. Maya's mind shifted into a state she had learned to access during her darkest moments, a place where emotion became irrelevant and only pure calculation existed. She began breaking down the problem into components so small that each one became solvable. The rifle shot left by 0.3 mils. The wind at her position was 15 kilometers per hour northwest. The canyon would accelerate it by approximately 30%. The ridge would create a vertical component. The depression would generate unpredictable eddies. She pulled out her notebook and began sketching, not just the terrain, but the mathematical model of how air would behave across each section. Isaiah watched her work, seeing something shift in her demeanor. The despair was gone, replaced by the focused intensity of someone solving a complex equation. She was not trying to make a shot anymore. She was trying to understand the physics of why her previous shots had failed. And once she understood that, the solution would follow. The exercise below had concluded, SEAL teams extracting with their simulated hostages, other sniper positions securing and clearing. But Maya's position remained active, the scenario designers having built in an extended timeline for the long-range containment role. She still had opportunity. The question was whether she had enough understanding. Maya made a series of calculations in her notebook, cross-referencing terrain features with wind behavior models she had memorized from advanced ballistics texts. The canyon acceleration was not uniform, she realized. The northern edge would wind faster than the southern edge, creating a lateral gradient across the bullet's path. And the ridge turbulence would not just deflect vertically, but would create a corkscrew effect, spinning the air column. She had been calculating for average wind. She needed to calculate for wind structure. Isaiah, she said, her voice steady now. I need you to watch the mirage at 1,200 meters, 1,800 meters, and 2,400 meters. Tell me if the shimmer pattern is consistent or if you see variation. Isaiah adjusted his spotting scope, examining the heat mirage at each distance. Variation, he reported. At 1,200 it is moving right to left. At 1,800 it is almost vertical. At 2,400 it is chaotic, multiple directions. Maya nodded, the data confirming her model. The wind was not one variable. It was a sequence of different variables that her bullet would encounter in stages. She began a new calculation, this time treating the bullet's flight path as 4 distinct segments, each with its own environmental conditions. Segment 1, 0 to 1,000 meters, steady northwest wind, standard deflection. Segment 2, 1,000 to 2,000 meters, canyon acceleration, increased lateral component. Segment 3, 2,000 to 3,000 meters, ridge turbulence, vertical and rotational effects. Segment 4, 3,000 to 3,800 meters, depression eddies, unpredictable but lower velocity. She calculated the deflection for each segment, then integrated them into a total correction value. The math was complex, graduate-level ballistics that most snipers never attempted without computer assistance. But Maya had always seen numbers as a language more natural than words, a language where truth was absolute and unmistakable. She finished her calculations and stared at the result. To hit center mass at 3,800 meters in these conditions with this rifle, she needed to aim 7.1 mils right and 3.8 mils high. It felt wrong, looked wrong through the scope. But the math did not lie. Down at the command post, Keller was reviewing the exercise results with Voss and the other instructors. Overall performance was solid, Voss was saying. Bennett demonstrated excellent counter-sniper skills. Rodriguez showed strong tactical awareness. The students performed to standard. Keller nodded, but his attention kept returning to his notes about Ridge 7. What about Corporal Thorne's position? Voss's expression remained neutral. Unfortunately, the extended range proved too challenging. Multiple ranging shots without successful engagement. It confirms my assessment that she needs more time before taking on graduate-level positions. Keller frowned. You assigned a student to a position you believed was beyond her capability? Voss shook his head. I assigned her to a challenging position to see if she could rise to it. That is how we identify exceptional talent versus adequate performance. In this case, the evidence suggests she is not ready for that level of responsibility. Keller made another note, his expression thoughtful but not entirely convinced. On Ridge 7, Maya settled behind her rifle one final time. She made the adjustments her calculations demanded. The scope reticle aimed at a point that appeared to be 7 feet right and 4 feet high of her actual target. Through the scope, it looked absurd, like she was aiming at empty air. But she had learned to trust math over instinct, numbers over feeling. She controlled her breathing, felt her heartbeat, waited for the natural pause between beats. Isaiah beside her held his breath, watching through the spotting scope, knowing this was her last chance. Maya pressed the trigger. The rifle bucked against her shoulder, the report echoing across the desert. The bullet left the barrel at 900 meters per second, beginning its journey through the complex wind environment Maya had modeled. For the first 1,000 meters, it drifted right as the northwest wind pushed it. Entering the canyon, the accelerated wind caught it, continuing the rightward drift while gravity pulled it down. At 2,000 meters, it hit the ridge turbulence, the chaotic air creating vertical displacement that would have ruined a conventional hold. But Maya had aimed high, giving the bullet room to drop. At 3,000 meters, it entered the depression, the swirling eddies creating final, unpredictable movements that were impossible to calculate perfectly, but Maya had given herself margin. Isaiah watched through his spotting scope as the bullet trace crossed the final 100 meters. The tiny silhouette target, barely visible at this distance, was centered in his reticle. The bullet impacted with a puff of dust. Center mass. Perfect hit. Isaiah's hands shook as he lowered the scope. Holy God, he whispered. Maya, that was 3,847 meters. That is beyond anything anyone has done on this range. That is, he stopped, struggling for words. That is impossible. Maya kept her eye in the scope, not celebrating, verifying. The hit marker confirmed center mass impact at 3,847 meters, elevation differential of 112 meters, wind 43 kilometers per hour with gusts to 60. She had made the shot, not through luck or favorable conditions, through pure calculation, through understanding physics at a level that transcended normal training. She lifted her head from the scope and looked at Isaiah. We should report successful engagement. Isaiah keyed his radio with trembling hands. Ridge 7 to command. Successful engagement at. He paused, checking his range card again to ensure he had the number right at 3,847 meters. Center mass hit confirmed. There was a long silence on the radio. Then Keller's voice, crisp with disbelief. Ridge 7, confirm your range. Did you say 3,847 meters? Affirmative, Commander, Isaiah replied. 3,847 meters. Center mass impact confirmed by spotting scope and target marker. At the command post, Keller lowered his radio and turned to Voss. I need immediate verification of that engagement. Voss's face had gone pale. Commander, that distance it must be a measurement error. The position is not that far from, Keller cut him off. I need laser rangefinder confirmation, GPS coordinates of both firing position and target, and wind data recording. Now, he turned to his SEAL sniper team leader. Get up to Ridge 7. I want independent verification of everything. The verification process took 30 minutes. SEAL snipers climbed to Ridge 7, checked Maya's position with GPS and laser rangefinder. 3,847 meters, they confirmed. They examined the target marker, photographed the impact, recorded the wind data. Center mass hit in 43 kilometer per hour wind with complex terrain effects. They reviewed Maya's notebook, seeing her calculations, her terrain sketches, her segmented wind model. One of the SEAL snipers, a master chief with 20 years of experience, looked at Maya with something approaching awe. Ma'am, I've been doing this for 2 decades. I have never seen anyone model wine structure like this without computer assistance. This is graduate school level ballistics. Keller arrived at Ridge 7 himself, needing to see the position firsthand. He looked through Maya's scope at the target, barely visible at the distance. He examined her notebook, following her mathematical reasoning. He checked the rifle, noting it was not her primary weapon. Then he looked at Maya, really looked at her, seeing past the junior rank and the political complications to the fundamental capability she had just demonstrated. "Corporal Thorne," he said quietly, "how long have you been training with this rifle?" "This is my backup weapon, sir," Maya replied. "I drew it this morning when my primary rifle was flagged for maintenance issues." Keller's jaw tightened. "You made a 847-meter shot in complex wind with an unfamiliar rifle on your first day using it?" Maya nodded. "Fifth shot, sir. The first four were ranging to understand the rifle's characteristics and wind behavior." Keller turned to look at Voss, who had climbed up behind him, and something cold entered the commander's expression. "Staff Sergeant, I'm going to need a detailed explanation of why a student rifle was switched on the morning of a critical exercise, and why you assigned a position of this difficulty to a student using unfamiliar equipment." Voss opened his mouth to respond, but Keller held up a hand. "Actually, before you answer, I want to review all equipment logs and student assignments for the past 3 months. I suspect there is a pattern here that needs examination." Maya watched the exchange without emotion, feeling nothing except exhaustion. She had made the shot. She had proven something she was not even sure she had needed to prove. The math had worked. The physics had held. And somewhere in that process, something had changed. She was not the girl her stepfather had broken anymore. She was not the student Voss was trying to destroy. She was a sniper who had just set a range record that would stand in the logbooks for years. And no amount of sabotage or political maneuvering could erase that truth. The investigation began quietly, but moved with the inexorable momentum of a landslide. Keller requested all training records, equipment logs, and instructor evaluations from the past 3 months. What emerged was a pattern so systematic it could not be dismissed as coincidence or professional judgment. Maya had received the hardest assignments at every decision point. Her equipment had experienced maintenance issues before critical evaluations 4 separate times. Her performance reviews from Voss contained phrases like "shows potential, but lacks consistency and demonstrates adequate skill under favorable conditions," despite objective scores that placed her at the top of every measurable category. Captain Raymond Holt, base commander, convened a formal review board 3 days after the joint exercise. The conference room at Camp Pendleton was small and austere, designed for efficiency rather than comfort. Maya sat at one end of the table with Isaiah beside her as witness. Voss sat opposite, his uniform immaculate, his bearing correct. Keller occupied the third side with 2 other SEAL instructors who had observed the exercise. Captain Holt presided from the head of the table, a stack of documentation before him that had grown thicker each day. "Let us establish the facts," Holt began, his voice carrying the weariness of someone who had seen too many variations of this same story. "Corporal Thorne entered advanced sniper course 3 months ago as the only female student. She qualified with perfect scores on initial testing. Her performance throughout the course has been, he consulted his notes, exceptional by every objective measure. Yet Staff Sergeant Voss's evaluations have been consistently qualified with concerns about readiness and judgment." He looked up at Voss. "Help me understand that discrepancy." Voss had clearly prepared for this moment. "Sir, objective scores tell only part of the story. Sniper work requires intangibles that are harder to measure. Stress management, decision-making under pressure, the ability to perform when lives depend on it. My evaluations reflected concerns about whether Corporal Thorne possessed those intangibles at a level consistent with her technical skills." Holt nodded slowly. "Any equipment issues?" "For separate instances where her assigned rifle experienced problems immediately before critical evaluations." Voss did not hesitate. "Unfortunate timing, sir. The armory logs show those rifles were due for maintenance. The timing was coincidental." Keller leaned forward, his voice quiet but edged with steel. "Staff Sergeant, I have reviewed those armory logs personally. 3 of the 4 rifles in question showed no maintenance issues when they were inspected after being pulled from Corporal Thorne's use. 1 had a scope mount that had been deliberately loosened. That is not maintenance. That is sabotage." The room went silent. Voss's expression remained controlled, but something flickered in his eyes. "Sir, I resent the implication. I have served this Corps for 15 years with distinction. I would never compromise student safety or training integrity for any reason. Keller slid a document across the table. This is a statement from the armory sergeant. He confirms that you personally requested 3 of the 4 rifle changes, citing concerns that went undocumented in official logs. Care to explain that? Maya watched Voss's face as he processed the trap closing around him. She felt no satisfaction, no triumph. Just a tired recognition that some battles were necessary, but left everyone diminished by fighting them. Voss cleared his throat. I may have requested equipment changes based on my professional assessment of student needs. That is within my authority as lead instructor. But I never, he emphasized the word, never intentionally compromised equipment or safety. Captain Holt consulted another document. Let us move to the joint exercise. You assigned Corporal Thorne to Ridge 7, a position 3,800 meters from the target area. That is beyond any distance attempted by students in this course's history. Explain your reasoning. Voss straightened slightly, back on more comfortable ground. Sir, the exercise scenario required long-range containment coverage. Corporal Thorne had demonstrated aptitude for extended range calculation. I believed she could handle the assignment. So you had confidence in her ability? Holt pressed. Voss hesitated, recognizing the trap, but unable to avoid it. I believed she should have the opportunity to attempt advanced work. And yet, Keller interjected, you told me 2 days before the exercise that you had concerns about putting her in a primary role, that you worried it would set her up for failure. You recommended support and logistics coordination instead. Then on exercise day, you assigned her the most difficult position in the entire scenario. That seems contradictory. Voss's composure cracked slightly. The scenario requirements changed. I adapted assignments accordingly. Keller shook his head. I designed the scenario, Staff Sergeant. Nothing changed. You assigned Corporal Thorne to Ridge 7, knowing it was beyond Corps standards, using a rifle she had never trained with, in front of evaluators you believed would judge her harshly. That is not professional instruction. That is setting someone up to fail publicly. The SEAL instructor to Keller's right spoke for the first time, his voice carrying the gravitas of 3 decades in special operations. For the record, I need to state that Corporal Thorne's performance at Ridge 7 was the most impressive shooting I have witnessed in my career. The environmental calculation, the wind modeling, the adaptation to unfamiliar equipment, all of it was graduate level work. We have snipers with 10 years of experience who could not make that shot. She did it after 3 months of training, with a rifle she drew that morning, under conditions designed to be impossible. Maya kept her eyes on the table, uncomfortable with the praise, more comfortable with the math than the recognition. Holt turned his attention to her. Corporal Thorne, do you have anything you wish to add to this review? Maya looked up, meeting his eyes. Sir, I just want to be evaluated on my capability, not on assumptions about my capability. Staff Sergeant Voss is correct that intangibles matter, but I believe I have demonstrated the intangibles through performance under adverse conditions. If the question is whether I can perform under pressure, I think Ridge 7 answered that. Holt nodded. Indeed it did. He turned back to Voss. Staff Sergeant, I am going to be direct. The pattern documented here shows systematic bias, whether conscious or unconscious. Equipment issues concentrated on one student. Assignment choices that consistently disadvantaged that same student. Evaluation language that contradicted objective performance. And a joint exercise assignment that appears designed to create public failure. He paused. I do not believe you acted with malicious intent. I believe you acted on assumptions about capability that were not supported by evidence. But the impact on Corporal Thorne's training and the potential impact on her career are the same regardless of intent. Voss's face had gone rigid. Sir, I have only ever tried to uphold the standards of this Corps, to ensure that everyone who graduates this course is genuinely ready for the responsibility. Keller's voice cut through. By making it twice as hard for one student as for everyone else, that is not upholding standards. That is applying standards selectively. Captain Holt raised a hand before the argument could escalate. Here is my decision. Staff Sergeant Voss, You are removed from instructor duties for this course effective immediately. You will be reassigned to administrative responsibilities, pending a full investigation into training procedures. Voss started to protest, but Holt continued. Corporal Thorne, your performance throughout this course has been exceptional. Your Ridge 7 engagement is being entered into Marine Corps records as the longest confirmed training shot in this base's history. Commander Keller has requested that you be considered for advanced training with Naval Special Warfare Group. I'm approving that recommendation. Maya felt Isaiah's hand on her shoulder, a gesture of support and celebration. But she could not quite feel the victory. She looked at Voss, seeing in his expression not just professional defeat, but something deeper. A man whose worldview had been challenged and found wanting. She thought about her stepfather, about the moment she had finally escaped his control, about how his anger had been mixed with something that looked almost like confusion, as if he genuinely could not understand how she had succeeded despite his certainty that she would fail. The meeting concluded with administrative details and next steps. As people filed out, Gunnery Sergeant Nash appeared in the doorway. She had not been part of the formal review, but her presence now felt significant. "Maya," she said quietly. "A word?" They stepped into the hallway, away from the others. Nash's expression was serious, but not unkind. "What you did at Ridge 7 was remarkable, but I need you to understand something. This victory, it matters. It changes things, but is not in the fight." Maya nodded slowly. "I know. There will always be another Voss." Nash shook her head. "Not what I meant. The fight I'm talking about is the one inside you. The one where you prove yourself over and over because you still hear your stepfather's voice saying you are not good enough. That fight does not end with one shot, no matter how impossible. It ends when you finally believe what the evidence has been showing you all along. That you are exceptional, not for a woman, not despite being a woman, just exceptional, period." Maya felt something crack in her chest, some defensive wall she had built so carefully she had stopped noticing its weight. "I do not know how to believe that," she said quietly. Nash smiled. "Then let me tell you what I tell every student who faces this. Start by accepting that your performance speaks louder than anyone's opinion. You made a 847-meter shot with an unfamiliar rifle in complex wind. That is not luck. That is not favorable conditions. That is skill at a level most snipers never achieve. So when the voice in your head says you're not good enough, point to that shot and tell the voice is wrong." Isaiah emerged from the conference room, his expression lighter than Maya had seen in weeks. "They're talking about entering your shot in the official record books," he said, "and Keller wants to meet with us tomorrow about SEAL training opportunities." Maya nodded, trying to process the sudden shift in trajectory. Nash squeezed her shoulder. "Go celebrate with your partner. You both earned it. But remember what I said. The external validation is nice. The internal acceptance is necessary." That evening, Maya sat alone on a bench outside the barracks, watching the sun set over the California desert. She pulled out her notebook, the one filled with calculations and diagrams and wind models. On a fresh page, she wrote a single line. 3,847 meters. Then below it, "I am enough." The words looked strange on paper, foreign and uncomfortable. But they were true. The math proved they were true. And Maya had learned long ago to trust math over feeling. She was enough. She had always been enough. And tomorrow, she would begin the work of making herself believe it. Commander Keller's office was sparse and functional, decorated only with a single photograph of a SEAL team in full kit, standing in what looked like Afghanistan. Maya and Isaiah sat across from his desk, both still processing the speed at which their futures had changed. Keller opened a folder and studied its contents for a moment before speaking. "Your record shot has generated significant interest," he began, "not just within Marine sniper community, but across all special operations branches. The ballistics analysis confirms what we observe in the field. Your wind modeling approach is unprecedented for someone at your experience level." He slid a document across the desk. "This is an invitation to Naval Special Warfare Advanced Sniper Course. It is a 6-month program that typically accepts only operators with 5 or more years of experience. The curriculum covers advanced ballistics, unconventional shooting positions, urban counter-sniper operations, and integrated special operations tactics. He paused, meeting Maya's eyes. I am recommending both of you. Corporal Thorne for her calculation abilities, and Corporal Reeves for his spotting excellence. You work well together. That partnership is valuable. Isaiah spoke first. Sir, I am honored. But I need to ask, is this opportunity coming because of Maya's shot, or because you believe we can actually succeed in the program? Keller's expression remained serious. Both. The shot opened the door. Your performance over 3 months suggests you can walk through it. But I will not mislead you. This program has a 50% attrition rate among experienced special operations personnel. You will be the least experienced students in the course by a significant margin. Some instructors will resent your presence. Some will actively work to wash you out. The question is not whether it will be hard. The question is whether you are willing to commit to that level of difficulty for 6 months. Maya thought about Voss, about her stepfather, about every person who had told her she did not belong somewhere. Then she thought about Ridge 7, about the math that had proven them all wrong, about the knowledge that she could calculate wind that most people could not even see. Yes, sir, she said. I am willing. Isaiah nodded. Same, sir. We have come this far. Might as well see how far we can go. Keller smiled slightly. Good. The course starts in 3 weeks at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado. You will complete your current sniper course here first, graduate with your class. Then you report to Coronado for SEAL sniper training. He pulled out another document. There's one complication. The course commander is Master Chief Garrett Stillwell. He is one of the best snipers in naval special warfare history, but he is also old school. He believes in earned respect, not given respect. He believes positions should be proven, not assigned. And he believes, his eyes locked on Maya, that physical capability matters more than calculation ability when lives are on the line. So he is going to be skeptical of me, Maya said. It was not a question. Keller nodded. He will test you harder than he tests anyone else. He will look for weaknesses, for limits, for reasons to say you are not ready. And if he finds them, he will use them. Not out of malice, but out of genuine belief that special operations sniper work demands a standard that cannot be compromised. You convinced me with Ridge 7. Now you need to convince him over 6 months. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of final exercises, graduation ceremonies, and preparation for the move to Coronado. Maya and Isaiah completed the advanced sniper course at the top of their class. Their final scores so far above the others that instructors started using their performance as the new benchmark. Bennett graduated second and sought Maya out on the final day. You made us all better, he said simply. Raise the standard for everyone. Good luck with the SEALs. They are lucky to have you. Gunnery Sergeant Nash presented Maya with her graduation certificate personally. I have one last piece of advice, Nash said quietly. Master Chief Stillwell is going to push you. He's going to question your every decision, challenge your every technique, test your resolve in ways Voss never imagined. But here is what you need to understand. Stillwell does it because he genuinely cares about getting it right. Voss wanted you to fail. Stillwell wants you to succeed, but only if you truly earn it. That difference matters. Accept his challenges as opportunities, not attacks. The drive to Naval Amphibious Base Coronado took 6 hours through Southern California traffic. Maya watched the landscape change from desert to coast, feeling the weight of what she was attempting settle into her awareness. SEAL sniper training, the most elite marksmanship program in the American military. And she was walking into it with 3 months of formal sniper experience against operators who had spent years in combat. The math of it was daunting even for someone who loved difficult equations. Isaiah, driving the borrowed truck, glanced over at her. You're doing the thing where you calculate odds and convince yourself they are against us. Maya smiled despite herself. The odds are against us. We are the least experienced students in a course designed for experts. Isaiah shrugged. Yeah, but odds did not account for you making an impossible shot at Ridge 7. Odds said that was mathematically improbable. You did it anyway. So maybe stop trusting odds and start trusting capability. They arrived at Coronado as the sun was setting over the Pacific, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The base had a different energy than Camp Pendleton, something harder and more focused. This was where SEALs trained, where the nation's most elite warriors were forged. Maya felt simultaneously out of place and exactly where she needed to be. Master Chief Garrett Stillwell met them at the Corps headquarters the next morning. He was older than Keller, maybe 50, with gray hair cut high and tight, and eyes that had seen things Maya could only imagine. His bearing radiated authority earned through decades of difficult work in difficult places. He looked at Maya and Isaiah with the expression of someone evaluating equipment for a mission. "So you are the Marines everyone is talking about," he said, his voice carrying the rough edge of too many years breathing dust and gunpowder. "The ones who made the miracle shot." "Yes, Master Chief," Maya replied. Stillwell grunted. "I read the after-action report. Impressive numbers. 847 meters in 43-kilometer wind with unfamiliar weapon. Graduate-level ballistics calculation. Record-setting performance." He paused. "Also the most controlled conditions you will ever experience. No one shooting back at you. No time pressure beyond self-imposed. No teammate bleeding out while you calculate wind gradients. You made a great shot. Now I need to learn to make great shots when everything is on fire and people are dying." He led them to the armory, where rows of precision rifles waited in racks. "This course is not about proving you can shoot in perfect conditions. It is about proving you can shoot when conditions are impossible. When you are exhausted, when you are scared, when you have been awake for 3 days and your hands are shaking from adrenaline." He pulled a rifle from the rack and handed it to Maya. "That record shot at Camp Pendleton? That is your baseline here. That is where we start, not where we finish." Over the next week, Stillwell introduced them to the Corps' curriculum. Advanced urban shooting from unconventional positions. Counter-sniper work requiring split-second target identification. Integrated operations with assault teams where timing mattered more than precision. Environmental shooting in conditions that made Ridge 7 look comfortable. Every scenario designed to push them beyond what they thought possible. But unlike Voss, Stillwell pushed everyone equally hard. The course had 12 students, all experienced SEAL snipers except Maya and Isaiah. Stillwell broke them down without regard to rank or background, found everyone's weaknesses, exploited everyone's fears. He was not trying to make anyone fail. He was trying to forge them into something harder than they had been. And slowly, Maya began to understand the difference Nash had described. 2 weeks into the course, Stillwell pulled Maya aside after a particularly brutal urban shooting exercise. "Corporal, you need to understand something about the way you shoot. Your calculation ability is extraordinary. Your wind reading is the best I have seen in 30 years. But you think too much. In combat, you will not have time to sketch terrain models and run segmented wind calculations. You need to develop instinct that matches your analysis." He looked at her seriously. "The math is your foundation. Now I need to build speed on top of it." The challenge he described was exactly what Maya feared most. She trusted math because math was reliable, predictable, absolute. Instinct was uncertain, subject to error, dependent on confidence she was not sure she possessed. But Stillwell was right. In the field, with lives depending on her, she would need to make decisions faster than calculation allowed. She would need to trust herself the way she trusted numbers. That night, Maya sat on the beach near the base, watching waves roll in under moonlight. Isaiah found her there, sitting in silence. "Stillwell got to you today," he said, settling onto the sand beside her. "Told you to trust instinct over analysis." Maya nodded. "How do I do that?" "I trust math because math does not lie. My instinct has been wrong before. My stepfather used to tell me my instincts were broken, that I could not trust my own judgment. How do I suddenly believe the opposite?" Isaiah was quiet for a moment. "Maybe," he said slowly, "you start by recognizing that your instinct made you calculate wind at Ridge 7 when everyone else would have said it was impossible. Your instinct told you not to quit when Voss gave you that assignment. Your instinct brought you here to the hardest sniper course in the world, when you could have stayed comfortable. Your instinct is not broken, Maya. It just sounds different than other people's because it speaks in math. Maya let those words settle into her awareness, feeling their truth. Her instinct had always been calculation, but calculation in service of survival, of proving worth, of refusing to accept limits others tried to impose. Maybe trusting instinct did not mean abandoning math. Maybe it meant trusting that the math would come fast enough when she needed it, that years of practice had built pathways her conscious mind could rely on even when there was no time to think. She looked out at the ocean, at water moving according to physics she understood instinctively, even if she could not calculate every molecule's trajectory. Master Chief Stillwell was right. She needed to become faster. But Isaiah was also right. She had always been fast where it mattered. Now she just needed to believe it. The point of no return had arrived. 6 months of the hardest training in the military stretched ahead. And somewhere at the end of it, if she survived, was the person she had always been becoming. Someone who trusted math and instinct equally because she finally understood they were the same thing. 4 months into the SEAL sniper course, Maya stood in a rain-soaked urban environment at 0300, her body screaming from 72 hours of continuous operations. The scenario was brutally simple. Hostage situation in a multi-story building. 3 unknown shooters holding civilians. SEAL assault teams stacked at entry points waiting for sniper clearance to breach. Maya and 2 other core snipers had overlapping fields of fire, each responsible for different windows, different angles, different lives. The rain made everything harder, water running down her scope, distorting the image. Wind gusts unpredictable, changing moment to moment. Visibility degraded to maybe 80 meters clearly, everything beyond that a blur of precipitation and darkness. And somewhere in that building, through windows streaming with rain, were targets she needed to identify and neutralize within a 3-second window when the assault team went active. Master Chief Stillwell's voice crackled through a radio. This is why we train in misery, Corporal. Combat does not wait for good weather. You have 2 minutes until breach. Confirm your holds. Maya pressed her eye to the scope, fighting fatigue that made her hands shake, ignoring the cold rain soaking through her gear. 3rd floor, 2nd window from the left. She could see movement, a shadow that might be a hostage or might be a hostile. Not clear enough. Not certain enough. Isaiah beside her whispered corrections. Thermal signature suggests 2 people in that room. 1 static, 1 mobile. Mobile is likely hostile. Maya adjusted her aim fractionally, watching the window, waiting for the moment of clarity that would make the shot ethical and legal. The rain slackened for just a second, visibility improved, and she saw the mobile figure clearly. Adult male, weapon visible, positioning that indicated threat, not victim. Target confirmed. 90 seconds to breach, Stillwell announced. All snipers report ready status. The other 2 snipers confirmed their targets, their voices steady despite the conditions. Maya took a breath, felt her heartbeat, ignored the voice in her head, calculating all the variables that could make this shot fail. She had spent 4 months learning to quiet that voice, to trust that her training had compressed the calculation into instinct, that she could make the decision fast enough when it mattered. Target confirmed, 3rd floor, 2nd window, she reported. Standing by. Stillwell acknowledged. Good copy. All elements stand by for breach. The seconds stretched. Maya controlled her breathing, feeling the rain, the cold, the exhaustion. This was what Stillwell had meant about making great shots when everything was on fire. Not literally on fire, but close enough. Conditions impossible, stakes absolute. No room for hesitation. Breach, 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 Stillwell commanded. The assault teams hit their entry points simultaneously, explosive charges blowing doors, flashbangs detonating inside. Maya's finger moved to the trigger, her scope centered on the mobile target who was now turning toward the sound of the breach. No time for calculation, no time for analysis. Just training and instinct compressed into a single smooth trigger press. The rifle bucked. Through the rain and darkness, Through the degraded visibility and chaos, her bullet found its mark. The hostile dropped. The other two snipers fired simultaneously, their targets neutralizing. The assault teams poured into the building, clearing rooms with mechanical efficiency. 30 seconds later, Stillwell's voice confirmed. Exercise complete. All hostiles down, all civilians secured, all shooters effective. Secure your positions and stand by for debrief. Maya lowered her rifle, her hands shaking now that the immediate pressure was released. She had made the shot. Not at record distance, not an interesting wind, just a difficult shot under terrible conditions with lives theoretically depending on it. And she had trusted herself enough to take it without overthinking, without second-guessing, without letting fear paralyze the decision. Isaiah squeezed her shoulder. That was the fastest I have ever seen you identify and engage. You're getting there. The debrief happened in a bare classroom, all 12 students dripping rainwater onto concrete floors, exhaustion written on every face. Stillwell reviewed each shooter's performance with brutal honesty. First sniper took too long to confirm target, hesitation that could have cost assault team lives. Second sniper rushed the shot. Hit was acceptable, but placement could have been better. Then he turned to Maya. Corporal Thorne, your engagement was textbook. Target identification was thorough, but not slow. Shot placement was perfect. Decision-making showed confidence without recklessness. He paused. 4 months ago, you would have spent 3 minutes calculating that shot and missed the window. Tonight, you made it in 3 seconds. That is the progression we need. The praise felt different than anything Maya had experienced before. Not praise for exceeding expectations or surprising people, but recognition of genuine competence earned through brutal work. She had not made an impossible shot tonight. She had made a necessary shot under difficult conditions. And somehow that felt more important than Ridge 7. But Stillwell was not finished. However, he continued, I need to address something I have observed across this course. Some of you, he looked directly at Maya, came here with extraordinary technical skills, but lacked operational experience. Others came with years of experience, but lacked technical refinement. The course is designed to balance those deficiencies. He pulled up footage from the night's exercise. Look at Corporal Thorne's shooting position. Perfect for the shot, terrible for tactical movement. If the scenario had required her to relocate under fire, that position would have pinned her. Maya felt her stomach sink, recognizing the truth immediately. She had focused so completely on the shot that she had not considered what came after the shot. In a real operation, shooting was just one part of a larger tactical picture. Stillwell continued. This is not a criticism unique to you, Corporal. Everyone in this room has made similar mistakes at some point in the course. The question is whether you learn from them. He switched to another angle, showing the other snipers. Note how Petty Officer Chun positioned himself with 2 exit routes. Note how Chief Martinez maintained tactical awareness even while engaging. These are the operational considerations that separate good technical shooters from complete special operations snipers. The lesson burned because it was fair. Maya had spent 4 months developing shooting speed and instinct. Now Stillwell was showing her the next level, the integration of shooting with tactical thinking, the ability to see the whole battlefield instead of just the target. It was humbling and necessary in equal measure. After the debrief, as students dispersed toward their quarters and desperately needed sleep, Stillwell called Maya back. A moment, Corporal. She turned, uncertain what additional criticism was coming. Stillwell's expression was serious, but not unkind. I was hard on you in there because you needed to hear it. But I also need you to understand something. You have progressed faster in 4 months than most students progress in the entire course. Your shooting is now at a level that matches operators with 5 years of experience. Your tactical awareness is developing, and your ability to perform under stress has been proven repeatedly. He pulled out a document. This is a preliminary evaluation report that will go into your file. It recommends you for specialized countersniper operations upon course completion. That recommendation is rare for any student, unprecedented for someone with your limited time in service. but it is earned. He met her eyes. The record shot at Camp Pendleton opened doors. The work you have done here is what keeps them open. Do not confuse the two. Maya nodded, feeling something shift in her understanding. Ridge 7 had been about proving she belonged. Coronado had been about becoming someone who genuinely did belong. The difference mattered. Thank you, Master Chief, for pushing me, for not accepting less than I could become. Stillwell almost smiled. That is the job, Corporal. Now go get some sleep. Tomorrow we start desert operations, and I promise the rain will seem pleasant by comparison. That night, Maya lay in her rack, unable to sleep despite exhaustion. She thought about the shot she had made, about Stillwell's critique and his praise, about the path she had traveled from that first day at Camp Pendleton. She pulled out her phone and composed a message she had been avoiding for months. A message to her mother, who she had not spoken to since leaving home, who had stayed with the stepfather even after Maya escaped. Mom, she typed, I know we have not talked in years. I know you made choices I did not understand, but I wanted you to know that I am okay. More than okay. I am becoming someone I am proud of. The military gave me something I never had at home, a place where merit matters more than someone's opinion of my worth. I am not writing to ask for anything or to relitigate the past, just to let you know that the girl you worried about, the one he said would never amount to anything, is proving him wrong every single day. Maybe someday we can talk, but for now, I just needed you to know I survived, and I am thriving. She read the message 3 times before sending it, knowing it might go unanswered, knowing it might open wounds better left closed. But she sent it anyway, because the girl who had fled her stepfather's house would never have had the confidence to reach out. And Maya was not that girl anymore. She was a Marine sniper on track to complete the most elite training in special operations. She was someone who made impossible shots and learned from failures and pushed through exhaustion to excellence. She was enough, and she was finally beginning to believe it. 2 months remained in the course. 2 months to refine tactical awareness, to integrate shooting with operational thinking, to complete the transformation from talented student to complete operator. The hardest work still waited, but Maya had learned something crucial in 4 months at Coronado. The hardest work was where she thrived. And with Isaiah beside her and Stillwell pushing her and her own hard-won confidence supporting her, she was ready for whatever came next. The final exercise of the SEAL Sniper course was designed to break students who had survived everything else. 5 days of continuous operations in the desert east of San Diego, temperatures exceeding 40 degrees Celsius during the day and dropping near freezing at night. Scenarios that required navigation, shooting, tactical planning, and physical endurance pushed past reasonable limits. Students worked in pairs, hunted by SEAL instructors playing enemy forces, required to complete objectives while avoiding detection and elimination. Maya and Isaiah received their mission brief at 0600 on day 1. Infiltrate 12 kilometers into the operational area, establish covert observation post overlooking a simulated enemy compound, identify and eliminate 3 high-value targets over 4 days, exfiltrate without detection. All while instructors actively hunted them using thermal optics, drones, and decades of experience in tracking people who did not want to be found. The first 2 days were pure misery. Movement only at night, when thermal signatures were harder to distinguish from cooling rocks and desert fauna. Days spent in hide sites barely large enough to contain 2 people and their equipment, unable to move more than a few inches, unable to make noise, watching the compound through spotting scopes while sweat soaked through every layer of clothing. Maya learned that making impossible shots was the easy part of sniper work. The hard part was existing in conditions designed to grind away every shred of comfort and dignity while maintaining absolute tactical discipline. On the morning of day 3, they identified their first target, a role player moving through the compound with the pattern of someone important, someone who commanded rather than followed. Maya ranged him at 870 meters, calculated the early morning wind, made the adjustment. The shot broke clean, the simulated kill confirmed by range observers. 1 down, 2 to go. But the shot had revealed their position. Within an hour, instructor forces were moving toward their area, searching for the hide site. Maya and Isaiah had to extract immediately, abandon the carefully prepared position, relocate under daylight conditions when movement meant almost certain detection. They crawled through brush and rocks, moving inches at a time, taking 3 hours to cover 200 meters. Twice they froze as instructor patrols passed within 10 meters, barely breathing, every muscle locked in place. They established a new position by nightfall, exhausted and dehydrated but undetected. Isaiah whispered as they settled in. That was too close. If they had thermal, we would be done. Maya nodded, her body aching from the crawl. Tomorrow we take target 2 from longer range. Less accurate but safer extraction. Isaiah agreed, and they settled into the terrible routine of another day hiding in the desert. Day 4 brought the second target identification. This time Maya ranged at 1,200 meters, far enough that extraction could happen without immediate compromise. The shot required more calculation, more adjustment for the increased distance and the afternoon heat mirage. She took her time, built her model, made the shot. Another clean hit. 2 down. But something changed in that moment. As Maya watched the target drop through her scope, she felt none of the satisfaction she had felt at Ridge 7 or even at the first target. This was just work, professional and necessary, but no longer proving anything. She had made 1,000 difficult shots over 6 months. One more did not change who she was. The transformation Stillwell had promised was complete. She was not a student anymore. She was an operator. The final target appeared on day 5, the last day of the exercise. But this one was different. The target was mobile, moving with a security detail, never staying exposed for more than a few seconds. Maya and Isaiah tracked him for 4 hours, watching his pattern, understanding his movement. Then Maya saw it, the one moment in his rotation where he paused to speak with someone, a 4-second window that repeated every 20 minutes. She ranged the position. 1,400 meters. Significant wind from the east. Heat mirage creating vertical distortion. And a 4-second window to identify, aim, and fire. This was the final test, the shot that required everything she had learned compressed into pure execution. No time to sketch models or run detailed calculations. Just instinct built on 6 months of brutal training. The target entered his pattern, moving through the compound. Maya tracked him, her breathing controlled, her mind calm. She had run the calculations subconsciously, her brain processing wind and distance and timing without conscious thought. The target stopped, turned to speak to someone. Maya's crosshairs settled. Her finger pressed. The rifle reported. The target dropped. 3 for 3. Isaiah exhaled slowly. That was the fastest I have ever seen you work. You did not even hesitate. Maya lowered her rifle, feeling something like completion. I did not need to hesitate. I knew. He grinned despite his exhaustion. Yeah, you did. The exfiltration was supposed to be the final challenge, 12 kilometers back to the extraction point, while instructor forces knew their general area and were actively hunting. But 6 months of training had prepared them for exactly this. They moved with patience and discipline, using terrain and darkness, avoiding patterns, thinking like prey that refused to be caught. When they reached the extraction point at 847 on the final night, Master Chief Stillwell was waiting with a vehicle. He said nothing during the drive back to base, just handed them water and let them recover. Only after they had showered and slept and reported for debrief did he speak about their performance. 5 days, 3 targets, 0 compromises, he began. Clean shots at 870, 1,200, and 1,400 meters in field conditions with no support. Successful evasion of instructor forces who were actively hunting you. He paused. That is not student performance. That is operator performance. The classroom held all 12 core students, but only 10 remained. 2 had dropped during the final exercise, defeated by heat or exhaustion or the grinding pressure of being hunted. The survivors looked like they had aged years in 5 days, faces weathered by sun and stress, eyes carrying the knowledge of what they could endure. Stillwell continued. This course is designed to produce special operations snipers capable of operating independently in hostile environments for extended periods. It is designed to identify people who can make critical shots under impossible conditions while maintaining tactical discipline. He looked at each student in turn. You have all demonstrated that capability. You're all graduating. The room erupted in exhausted celebration. Students who had been too tired to speak suddenly finding energy to congratulate each other. Stillwell let it continue for a moment before raising a hand. However, I want to specifically recognize two students who exceeded standards in every measurable category. Corporal Maya Thorne and Corporal Isaiah Reeves came to this course with 3 months of formal sniper training. They were the least experienced students in course history. He smiled slightly. They are graduating at the top of the class. Maya felt Isaiah's hand on her shoulder, felt the weight of 6 months of impossible work settling into something that felt like accomplishment. Stillwell was not finished. Corporal Thorne, your final exercise shooting was flawless. But more importantly, your tactical discipline and operational awareness have developed to a level that matches operators with years of field experience. You came here as an exceptional technical shooter. You're leaving as a complete special operations sniper. He pulled out a certificate. It is my honor to present you with graduation from Naval Special Warfare Advanced Sniper Course and to recommend you for immediate assignment to specialized counter-sniper operations. The applause from the other students was genuine, earned through shared suffering rather than given through courtesy. Maya stood and accepted the certificate, shaking Stillwell's hand. Thank you, Master Chief, for not making it easy, for pushing until I found what I did not know I had. Stillwell nodded. You earned every bit of it, Marine. Now go make the Corps look good. After the ceremony, as students dispersed toward their next assignments, Commander Keller appeared. He had been present for the final debrief, observing from the back of the room. Maya, Isaiah, a moment please. They followed him outside where the California sun was setting over the Pacific. I want to tell you personally, Keller began, that I have been tracking your progression through this course. Master Chief Stillwell sends me weekly updates on all students, but yours have been particularly notable. He handed them each a folder. These are orders for your next assignments. Corporal Reeves, you are assigned to 2nd Marine Division as a senior sniper instructor. Your performance here suggests you have the technical skills and patience to train the next generation. Isaiah opened his folder, his expression showing surprised pride. Thank you, sir. I will do my best to honor that trust. Keller turned to Maya. Corporal Thorne, your orders are different. You are being assigned to a joint task force conducting specialized counter-sniper operations in support of special operations elements. The work is classified, challenging, and will put you in proximity to threats that make the final exercise look comfortable. He met her eyes. It is also the assignment I recommend for operators who have demonstrated exceptional capability under pressure. You will be working with the best snipers across all service branches. And based on your performance here, you belong with them. Maya opened her folder, seeing words like classified and joint special operations and counter-sniper. 6 months ago, this assignment would have terrified her. Now it felt like natural progression. Thank you, sir. I am ready. Keller smiled. I know you are. That is why I fought to get you this assignment. He paused. One more thing. Your record shot at Ridge 7 is being entered into official Marine Corps documentation. But I want you to know that shot is not what defines your career. What defines your career is what you did after that shot. The work, the growth, the transformation from talented student to elite operator. Never forget that distinction. That evening, Maya sat on the beach one final time, watching waves roll in under darkening sky. Her phone buzzed with a message. Her mother, responding after months of silence. Maya, I got your message. I am proud of you. I am sorry for the years I did not protect you. I am sorry I let it make you believe you were less than you are. I did not expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I see what you have become. And he was wrong about everything. Maya read the message 3 times, feeling something release in her chest. Not forgiveness yet, maybe not ever completely, but acknowledgement, recognition, the beginning of healing. She typed a response. Thank you for saying that. I'm not ready to talk yet, but maybe someday. For now, just know that I am okay. Better than okay. I am exactly who I was meant to become. She sent the message and stood, brushing sand from her uniform. Tomorrow she would report to her new assignment. Tomorrow she would begin the next chapter as an elite counter-sniper working alongside the best operators in the military. But tonight, she was simply Maya Thorne, a Marine who had survived her stepfather's abuse, Voss's sabotage, and Stillwell's crucible, who had made an impossible shot and then made 1,000 more, who had learned to trust math and instinct equally because she finally understood they were the same thing, who was enough, had always been enough, and would never doubt it again. 6 months into her assignment with the Joint Countersniper Task Force, Maya found herself in a classified location providing overwatch for a high-risk operation. The details were compartmented, the target list restricted, but the work was exactly what Keller had promised. Challenging, consequential, and conducted alongside operators who measured competence in lives saved rather than credentials earned. Her team leader was a Marine gunnery sergeant named Ramos, a veteran of 3 combat deployments who had initially been skeptical of Maya's assignment. But skepticism had evolved into respect after watching her work. She had proven herself not through single spectacular shots, but through consistent excellence across months of operations. The kind of excellence that built trust more effectively than any record. The current operation required patience Maya had learned during those brutal days in the desert at Coronado. 12 hours in position, minimal movement, waiting for a target that might never appear. Beside her, a Navy SEAL petty officer named Chun handled spotting duties, his experience complementing her calculation abilities. They had developed the kind of wordless communication that came from repeated operations together, each understanding the other's rhythm and method. Chun broke the silence with a whisper. Movement, north entrance, 2 individuals. Maya shifted her scope fractionally, acquired the figures. Both male, both armed, neither matching target profiles. Negative identification, she replied. Continue observation. The waiting resumed, and Maya felt none of the frustration that had plagued her months ago. She had learned that sniper work was 90% patience and 10% precision. The precision meant nothing without the patience to deploy it correctly. Hours later, the target appeared. Maya confirmed identification through multiple data points, cross-referenced with intelligence photos, verified with Chun before reporting to Ramos. Positive identification, primary target, north entrance. Range 1,400 meters, wind variable from the northwest. Request clearance to engage. Ramos's response was immediate. Stand by for clearance. Legal review in progress. The pause that followed was new, something Maya had needed time to understand. In training, shots were about capability and conditions. In operations, shots were about law and necessity. Every engagement required legal justification, verification that the target posed imminent threat, confirmation that civilian casualties could be avoided. The deliberation was not hesitation. It was professionalism. Clearance granted, Ramos finally transmitted. Execute on your timeline. Maya settled into her final breathing cycle, the moment before the shot where calculation became execution. She had made this type of shot hundreds of times in training and dozens in operations. The wind was complex but readable, the distance challenging but manageable. Her finger moved to the trigger with confidence built from countless repetitions. The shot broke clean, through Chen's spotting scope. The impact was immediate and precise. Target neutralized. The operation continued around them, other elements moving to secure the location, but Maya's role was complete. She maintained her position for another 2 hours, providing overwatch as the team extracted, then conducted her own tactical withdrawal. Only when she was back at the operations center did she allow herself to decompress, the adrenaline finally releasing its hold. Ramos found her during equipment maintenance. Good work today, he said without preamble. Clean identification, proper procedure, perfect execution. That is the standard we need. He paused, then added something unusual. I owe you an apology, Corporal. When you first joined this team, I had doubts. Young, limited field experience, assigned based on what I assumed was a spectacular training performance rather than operational capability. I was wrong. You have proven yourself an elite operator through consistent professional excellence. That matters more than any single shot. Maya looked up from cleaning her rifle. Thank you, Gunny. That means a lot coming from you. Holmes nodded. I am putting you up for meritorious promotion to sergeant. Your performance warrants it, and the team needs experienced leadership. She felt the weight of that recognition, understanding it represented something different than graduation certificates or record shots. This was acknowledgement from operators she respected that she belonged among them not as an exception, but as an equal. That evening, Maya video called Isaiah, who was thriving in his instructor role at 2nd Marine Division. His face appeared on screen, showing the satisfaction of someone doing work he loved. Maya, he greeted her with genuine warmth. How is the secret squirrel life treating you? She smiled. Cannot talk about most of it, but I can say the work is everything Keller promised. Challenging and meaningful. How is training the next generation? Isaiah's expression turned serious. Harder than I expected, he admitted. I have students who remind me of us 6 months in a sniper course. Talented, but doubting themselves. Facing instructors who see their potential, but push them brutally to reach it. I keep thinking about what Nash told you, about the difference between challenging and destroying. Trying to find that balance. Maya nodded. You will find it. You understand what real support looks like because you lived it. That makes you the right person for the job. They talked for another hour, sharing what they could about their separate paths, maintaining the connection that had sustained them through the hardest training either had experienced. Before ending the call, Isaiah said, I heard through the chain that you're being considered for promotion. Sergeant Thorne has a good sound to it. Maya laughed. Not official yet, but maybe feels strange to think about. Like I just figured out how to be a corporal, and now I am supposed to lead others. Isaiah's response was immediate. You have been leading others since Ridge 7. The rank just makes it official. After the call ended, Maya sat in her quarters looking at the walls decorated with nothing except a map and a single photograph. The photo showed her and Isaiah at SEAL Sniper Course graduation, both looking exhausted and proud in equal measure. She thought about the path from Camp Pendleton to Coronado to her current assignment, about the person she had been and the person she had become. Her phone showed another message from her mother. They had been communicating sporadically, short messages that avoided the painful past while acknowledging the present. This one was longer than usual. Maya, I wanted you to know that I left him. Moved to Arizona, started over. It took me years longer than it took you, and I'm not proud of that. But I finally found the courage you showed when you were 18. I am in therapy, working through things, trying to understand why I stayed so long. I hope someday you will let me explain. Not to justify it, but so you understand it was not about you. It was never about you. You were always enough. Maya read the message multiple times, feeling emotions she had spent years trying to suppress. Anger that her mother had not left sooner, had not protected her, had chosen the man who destroyed rather than the daughter who needed safety. But also recognition that courage came on different timelines for different people, that her mother's journey was separate from her own. She composed a careful response. I'm glad you are safe. I'm glad you're getting help. I'm not ready for explanations yet, but I am willing to keep talking. Small steps. That is all I can offer right now. The response felt honest without being cruel, boundaried without being cold. Maya sent it and felt something shift, some ancient weight loosening its grip. She was not responsible for healing her mother's wounds, but she could acknowledge the attempt without sacrificing her own peace. That balance, she realized, was its own kind of marksmanship, knowing what to hold on to and what to release, calculating the precise amount of pressure needed to move forward without breaking what mattered. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. Ramos stood in the hallway, his expression serious. Got a minute? We need to talk about your next assignment. Maya nodded, following him to the operations center. Inside, Commander Keller waited with several officers she did not recognize. Sergeant Thorne, Keller began, then smiled slightly. Sorry, Corporal Thorne for another few days, then Sergeant Thorne officially. Your promotion came through. Before Maya could respond, Keller continued. We have a situation that requires your specific skill set. There is a joint training exercise being planned, similar to the one at Camp Pendleton, but larger scope. Multiple service branches, international partners, high-level observation. We need experienced counter-sniper instructors to help design and execute the scenarios. He paused meaningfully. We also need someone who can relate to students facing their first exposure to elite-level expectations. Someone who remembers what it feels like to be underestimated and can help others navigate that experience. Maya understood immediately what he was asking. You wanted to go back to Camp Pendleton as an instructor. Keller nodded. Temporary assignment, 6 weeks. Help design the exercise. Mentor students who need it. Demonstrate that the path from student to elite operator is achievable. He smiled. Also, there's a certain staff sergeant who is back in an administrative role after his investigation. He will not be involved in the exercise, but your presence as a successful graduate and now sergeant might send an important message about who was right and who was wrong. Maya thought about Voss, about the months of sabotage and doubt, about Ridge 7 and everything that had followed. Going back would feel like victory, like proof that his efforts to destroy her had failed completely. But it would also be an opportunity to help students facing their own versions of what she had survived. To be the mentor she had needed, the voice that said your doubts are wrong and your potential is real. When do I report? She asked. Keller's smile widened. 2 weeks. That gives you time to complete your current operation cycle and brief your replacement. Ramos will write your handover evaluation. He glanced at Ramos, who nodded. I suspect it will be glowing. As Maya left the operations center, her mind was already working through what the temporary instructor assignment would require. Scenario design, student evaluation, mentorship of people facing the same challenges she had overcome. It felt like coming full circle, returning to where her transformation had begun, but now as someone completely different. Someone who had made impossible shots and survived impossible training and earned the respect of elite operators. Someone who was enough, had always been enough, and could help others understand that truth about themselves. She returned to her quarters and pulled out her notebook, the same one she had used to calculate wind at Ridge 7. On a fresh page, she wrote a single line. Going home, not as the person who left, but as the person who proved them all wrong. And this time, I get to help others do the same. The words looked right on paper, felt true in a way that went beyond mathematics. Sometimes the best shot you could make was not at a distant target, but at the chance to lift someone else up. And Maya was ready to take that shot. Sergeant Maya Thorne returned to Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton on a clear California morning 2 years after she had first arrived as a nervous corporal with everything to prove. The base looked the same, the ranges unchanged, the administrative buildings as austere as she remembered. But everything felt different because she was different. No longer the student fighting to belong, but the instructor tasked with ensuring others found their own belonging. The joint training exercise was massive in scope, involving Marine, Army, Navy SEAL, and Allied Nation sniper students. Maya's role was to design advanced scenarios and provide mentorship to students showing exceptional potential but struggling with confidence or external pressure. Essentially, to be for them what Gunnery Sergeant Nash had been for her. The symmetry felt appropriate. Her first day back, Maya crossed paths with Voss in the administrative building. He was reviewing paperwork, his role diminished to desk work and logistics coordination after the investigation. He looked up as she approached, his expression cycling through recognition, surprise, and something that might have been shame. Sergeant Thorne, he said, the rank clearly costing him effort to acknowledge. Staff Sergeant Voss, she replied evenly. He studied her, taking in her bearing, her confidence, the combat action ribbon on her uniform that indicated operational deployment. I heard about your assignment to the Counter-Sniper Task Force. Congratulations on your success. Maya could have said many things, could have reminded him of his sabotage, his certainty that she would fail, his systematic attempts to destroy her career before it began. But looking at him now, Diminished and sidelined, she felt only a distant recognition of how small his worldview had been. Thank you, Staff Sergeant. I learned a lot during my time in your course. About resilience, about proving capability through performance, about becoming stronger through adversity. She paused, letting the implications settle. It was valuable preparation for everything that followed. Voss nodded slowly, understanding that she was offering something between forgiveness and indifference, neither absolving him nor continuing to fight him. Just acknowledging what had happened and moving past it. I am glad you succeeded, he said quietly, and Maya thought he might actually mean it. Some people needed to witness the proof of their wrongness before they could acknowledge it. She left him to his paperwork and continued to the range where students were assembling. The exercise began with standard qualifications. Maya observing from the instructor line alongside Gunnery Sergeant Nash, who had been promoted and now ran the entire advanced sniper program. Nash smiled when Maya joined her. Good to have you back, Sergeant. Even if it is just temporary. How does it feel? Strange, Maya admitted. Like visiting a place I used to live, but does not quite feel like home anymore. Nash nodded. That means you have grown beyond it. That is what we want for all our students. Now let us see if we can help some of them grow too. Among the current student class, Maya noticed a young female lance corporal named Sarah Chun who moved with familiar uncertainty. Chun shot well, demonstrated solid fundamentals, but carried herself with the defensive posture of someone expecting to be challenged at every turn. Maya recognized that posture intimately. During a break, she approached Chun at the armory. Lance Corporal, a moment of your time. Chun stiffened, clearly expecting criticism. Yes, Sergeant. Maya softened her tone. I watched you shoot today. Your technique is excellent. Your wind reading is strong. But you look like you are waiting for someone to tell you that you do not belong here. Am I wrong? Chun hesitated, then shook her head. No, Sergeant. You are not wrong. I am the only woman in my class. Some of the other students, they do not say anything directly, but I can feel the doubt. Like they are waiting for me to fail, so they can say I was not ready. Maya nodded. I understand that feeling. I was the only woman in my class 2 years ago. Had an instructor who believed I would fail and did everything he could to make it happen. Chun looked up with sudden recognition. You are the corporal who made the record shot at Ridge 7. I read about it in the training materials. Maya smiled. I'm the sergeant who made that shot, yes. But that is not why I succeeded. I succeeded because I learned to stop trying to prove I belonged and started focusing on being undeniably excellent at my job. The difference matters. She met Chen's eyes. You do not owe anyone proof of your worth. You owe yourself the commitment to develop your full capability. Do that, and the proof takes care of itself. Chen nodded slowly. How do you stop caring what people think? Maya considered the question. You do not stop caring completely, but you start caring more about what you can control. Your preparation, your technique, your decision-making. Those things are yours. Other people's opinions are not. The conversation continued, Maya sharing insights from her own journey without making it about her record or accomplishments, just offering the perspective Chen needed to hear. By the end, Chen's posture had changed, shoulders back, chin up, the defensive uncertainty replaced with something firmer. Thank you, Sergeant. This helps more than you know. Maya squeezed her shoulder. You're going to do great, Lance Corporal. Trust yourself. The main exercise scenario began 3 days later, designed by Maya to challenge students without destroying them, to push limits without creating impossible situations. She had positioned herself as roving instructor, moving between student positions, providing guidance where needed. At one point, she found herself on Ridge 7, the exact position where she had made the shot that changed everything. The distance markers were still there, 3,847 meters to the target area. Maya set up a spotting scope and looked downrange, remembering the wind that day, the unfamiliar rifle, the moment of despair before Isaiah had pulled her back from quitting. It felt like a lifetime ago, like something that had happened to a different person. Because in many ways it had. Nash joined her on the ridge, looking out over the range. Thinking about that day? She asked. Maya nodded. Hard not to when I'm standing in the exact spot. Nash was quiet for a moment. You know what I remember most about that day? Not the shot itself, though that was remarkable. I remember the moment you decided to try again after missing those first 4 ranging shots. That moment when you chose to trust yourself instead of accepting defeat. That is what made you exceptional, not the marksmanship. Maya smiled. You told me afterward that I needed to start believing I was exceptional. I'm still working on that. Nash laughed. We all are, Sergeant. Every day. The work is never finished, but you are further along than most. She gestured at the range below. You are up here as an instructor now, helping others find their path. That is what success looks like. Not a perfect shot, a complete journey. The exercise concluded successfully 2 days later, students demonstrating growth and capability, several exceeding their own expectations. During the final debrief, Maya stood with the instructor cadre and watched the students receive their evaluations. She saw Chun receive high marks and genuine recognition for her performance. Saw other students who had struggled with confidence find validation in their achievements, and understood that this, helping others discover their potential, was perhaps more satisfying than any personal accomplishment. After the exercise, Commander Keller appeared for the final coordination meeting. He pulled Maya aside afterward. Your temporary assignment here was supposed to be about exercise design and student mentorship. But from what I hear, you exceeded that brief significantly. Multiple students have cited your guidance as transformational. Nash is already asking if we can extend your instructor assignment. Maya felt the pull of that possibility. Staying at Camp Pendleton, shaping the next generation, building a legacy beyond her own career. But she also felt the pull of operational work, of the counter-sniper missions that utilized her skills at their highest level. I appreciate the option, sir, she said carefully, but I think I am most valuable in the operational role right now. Maybe someday I will come back to instructing full-time. But for now, I want to keep making the hard shots when they matter. Keller nodded. I hope you would say that. We need operators like you in the field, but know that when you are ready, there's a place for you here too. Maya's final evening at Camp Pendleton, she sat alone on the range as the sun set. The same view she had watched countless times as a student. Her phone buzzed with a message from her mother. They had been talking more frequently now, building something that might eventually resemble a relationship. The message was simple. I saw a news article about the joint training exercise. It mentioned Sergeant Thorne as lead instructor. I am proud of you, Maya. Your stepfather is completely out of my life now. I am building something new. I hope you are too. Maya typed her response with care. I am building something new every day. Thank you for getting out. Thank you for trying to heal. We will figure out what our relationship looks like going forward. No ruse, just honesty and small steps. She sent it and felt another piece of old pain release its grip. If this story moved you, drop a comment about your favorite moment or character, or share if you have witnessed similar courage in real life. As darkness settled over the range, Maya stood and began the walk back to her quarters. Tomorrow she would return to her counter-sniper unit, to the classified missions and operational tempo that defined her current life. But she carried with her the knowledge that she had come full circle, had returned to the place of her greatest struggle and found peace there, had helped others navigate their own struggles and found purpose in that help. The girl who had arrived at Camp Pendleton with everything to prove was gone. In her place stood a woman who had nothing left to prove because she had already proven everything that mattered. A woman who made impossible shots and mentored struggling students and healed old wounds one difficult conversation at a time. A woman who understood that being enough was not a destination, but a practice, something you chose to believe every day despite the voices that said otherwise. Sergeant Maya Thorne, elite counter-sniper operator, survivor, mentor, daughter finding her way back to relationship with her mother. All of these identities woven together into someone complex and capable and finally truly at peace with who she had become. The math had always been on her side. She had just needed time to trust it. And now, walking away from Ridge 7 for perhaps the last time, she trusted it completely. The wind whispered across the California desert, and Maya understood every word it said. because she had learned to read the language of impossible things and translate them into reality. And that skill, more than any record or any rank, was the true measure of who she had become.